All right, welcome back to another episode of Want to Start a Fight, where we pick the greatest athlete ever from a Nebraska high school. And I did not spin the wheel this week. Instead, I had a suggestion. Hey, how about you try a big school? And I'm kind of thinking about that. And the big school suggested was actually Norfolk. But I had been thinking about Columbus quite a bit lately as, hey, how would I pick somebody there? And so Columbus High is interesting. I suppose it fits in our category of interesting nicknames. We're so used to the Columbus Discoverers, but that's really cool. I was very surprised that didn't make that national bracket that I think Cozad and Benson were in with the Haymakers and the Bunnies. I think the Discoverers deserves some due there, especially with Columbus. And I know there's been, a reevaluation of the history around Christopher Columbus. We certainly are not big Columbus Day people around my house, but that's still a pretty good nickname. I always loved the different junior high nicknames they used. When I was in school, their ninth graders were the pre-discoverers. Then when I was coaching against Columbus Middle School, they first went to the midshipment. Get it? Middle school midshipment. Now, and they wore navy, by the way, not maroon. Now I've noticed that the middle school teams have gone to maroon and are calling themselves the Discoverers. But enough of my interest in junior high nicknames for now. Okay, besides nickname, we should also talk about just the name of the school. Columbus is unique in Nebraska in that really from 1925 to 1958, they were officially Columbus Kramer High School. And that's always surprising because we expect a name on a high school if there's like multiple high schools in the district. Well, there never were multiple high schools in Columbus public schools, but they called the building that was their middle school for a long time. But until 1958, it had been their high school. They called that Kramer High School, named after an early superintendent. They were the Kramer High Discoverers from 25 to 58. Now they're on their second building since then, so Kramer's kind of disappeared into the shadows. But Kramer High School, a big part of the Columbus High School history. The first thing I thought I would do with Columbus, I knew I had put together a Columbus all-time football team. And I couldn't really remember what I was thinking when I did that, but I went and looked, and you see some great backs out of Columbus history. Tom Heiser of 72, Troy Watchhorn, who had a nice career at Nebraska, 96, Tom Ernst, great all-around athlete, 1959, and of course touchdown Corey Schlesinger, 1990, from Columbus. Also, I had a couple greats at end. Tim Carpenter, another great Husker, 83, and then Ernest Hausman, who looked like he was going to be a great Husker before he took off for Michigan. I didn't know the linemen as well, but some interesting athletes there. So then I thought, well, what would a basketball all-time great team? And I ended up, of course, I headed straight for their great 1972 state championship team, and I found Frank Brower and Paul Potter, who were the stars of that team. They would definitely be on an all-time Columbus 5 for me. And then you got the Columbus guys from some great teams in the late 80s and 90s. Steve Scheidegger, who was a 4-year starter for them, one of the first Class A freshman boys to kind of move to a varsity. I played against Scheidegger when he was young. Mike Mueller from the great, I want to say 89 team that was Class A runner-up to that perfect Millard South team. And then Nathan Blesson, who led the 96 team to a Class A runner-up finish. Really Columbus's greatest two modern basketball teams. And so that's a pretty good 5, but you'll notice there's no overlap with football. And so then I headed for track, and, I found some great sprinters like Tom Saunders of 60, Dan Soulier of 72, some great distance people like Mike Floyd of 68, Bob Provost of 47, going way back. But really I was a little surprised as you look at the Columbus state track multiple champions there. again, not a lot of overlap with football and basketball. I'm not seeing that one guy who's popping everywhere. And also just not as deep a track history as I thought I might find with Columbus. And then I thought, Columbus, what I ought to really be looking at is wrestling. Columbus wrestling, when you look at their state championship list, that's what pops out at you. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 Class A state championships. So, that's a big deal for Columbus. And when you look at wrestling for Columbus, you see the early greats, Randy Glure and Lindsey Ball, and you see some recent guys, Colton Wolfe and Jay Scherer, a great tradition of wrestling there. But there you finally see a duplicate. You see Corey Schlesinger, 2 state championships there, a great rivalry with Clester Johnson from Bellevue West. I mean, you want to talk about a great 198-pound. That might be the clash of the athletic titans. I don't know what wrestlers would say was the greatest clash of great wrestlers in a state final. But to me, on the great athletes list, that 1989 state championship is probably it. So that moves Schlesinger up to the top of our conversation. I think I've got to slip in here somewhere discussion of Columbus tennis. Because since 1984, their last wrestling title, they've had 5 tennis state championships, 2 girls, 4 boys, competing in Class B. They've always competed in Class B tennis, because Columbus was always on the smaller half of Class A, even back into the 60s. And that brings up somebody I think should get mentioned in this, and that is Dennis Hoyle, 2-time #1 single state champion for Columbus in 66 and 66. Well, that's kind of funny, okay? But Hoyle was the defending state champ after the last spring boys tennis meet, which was 1966. The next year he comes back as a senior. Boys tennis has moved to the fall. So only a few months later, 5 months later, he's winning another state title for Columbus in #1 singles. And so, Dennis Hoyle probably belongs in this conversation. But then what I realized I should have done right at the beginning is go to the Nebraska Hall of Fame. And I would have found that I had a big error in my football team because I left out somebody from the pre-All-State era, and that's Charles Brock, who went from Columbus to Nebraska to the Green Bay Packers. Great NFL career, class of 1935, and Columbus's first Hall of Fame member. And so Charles Brock, #1, belongs on that football team and probably belongs in this greatest athlete conversation real quick. You also see Tom Ernst there, and that reminds me, Tom Ernst, great baseball player. And sometimes I miss that, because baseball in Nebraska high schools is not at the top of mind always. And of course, schools like Columbus have only just recently revived baseball programs in the high school. Longtime American Legion programs, of course. Ernst was a great pitcher for them, was a great pitcher for Nebraska. So he probably belongs in that conversation. And of course, it reminded me, hey, are you thinking about the girls at all? And in Columbus, I think the girls' conversation ends pretty quick. They've had some amazing volleyball teams, probably the strength of their girls' side program. And they had a couple multiple all-staters like Tracy Knuth in 2003 and Amanda Gates in 2005, who went on to have a great career at Nebraska and led Columbus to a Class A runner-up finish. But really, Laura Pilikowski, who was an All-American at Nebraska, rises above there, and it's obvious quick that Laura Pilikowski is the greatest girl athlete ever from Columbus. Well, but that just brings me back to the boys' side. I think Ernst is a great argument, but in the end, I think it comes down to Schlesinger and Brock. I'll probably show my prejudice. That 1994 national championship team from Nebraska was pretty important in what I now consider my youth. I thought I was a grown-up then. But Schlesinger stumbling across the goal line, I think I've got to go with Corey Schlesinger as the greatest Columbus athlete of all time. All right, that's it for our first kind of garden side. Who wants to start a fight TikTok about Columbus? We can go back to spinning the wheel next time, or jump in whatever comments you're at here and give me a suggestion of a school you want to see, and I'll take a crack. I'm not sure how well I've justified the history of Columbus High, but trying to squeeze it down to fit in this. Thanks a lot, folks.